Something invisible moved when you spoke. It wasn't just sound traveling through the air. It was a shift so complete that even the quietest corners of existence paused to take notice. Your voice didn't just communicate. It carried a weight that pressed against the unseen layers of reality, rearranging them as if they'd been waiting for your permission to fall into place. There's a difference between speaking and releasing something that was never meant to stay locked inside you. And in that moment, you did the latter. It was as though every hidden current, every silent tide beneath the surface, suddenly recognized a familiar rhythm in you. The vibration of your words wasn't born from practice or performance. It came from a place beyond time, where truth isn't debated, only acknowledged. And as that truth poured out, it was clear this wasn't just you expressing yourself. Something older, wiser, and far larger than you had chosen to be heard through you. You are here for a reason. If you feel the call, answer it. Click Join to unlock exclusive content, deep insights, and a powerful community. This isn't just a membership, it's an awakening. Step into your divine purpose. Join the chosen. What you felt in your chest wasn't adrenaline. It was the recognition of alignment. Your inner world and the larger forces guiding it locked into the same path, like two rivers finally meeting after winding in opposite directions for years. That sense of certainty wasn't imagined. It was earned, carved from every hardship, every trial, and every moment you refused to bend under the weight of falsehood. For longer than you knew, there were plans being laid in dark corners you could not see. Shadows whispered strategies meant to silence you, to keep you second-guessing your own sight. They rearranged events, placed barriers in your path, and tried to keep your steps small. But the one thing they underestimated was your ability to endure, to keep moving even when you weren't sure where the road was leading. The moment you finally spoke wasn't random. It was the exact second those hidden schemes lost their grip. You didn't just break their plans. You rendered them irrelevant. There's a power in truth that doesn't need to shout, yet when it speaks through the right vessel at the right time, it leaves no stone unturned. And you, whether you realized it or not, became that vessel in the very instant they feared most. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. It's not just that you were right. It's that you were undeniable. The air around you seemed lighter afterward, as though a weight had been lifted that no one even realized they'd been carrying. Those who once tried to twist your vision now find themselves stumbling over their own words, unable to hold together the stories they built to contain you. And here's the part they never saw coming. Your words didn't just clear a path for you. They exposed every hidden door and every false wall in the room. Even those who didn't believe you at first are now forced to admit that something shifted when you spoke. Their world feels different now, not because it changed overnight, but because you revealed what was always there, hiding in plain sight. The truth you carried was never fragile. It waited patiently, letting you grow strong enough to hold it without fear. And now that it's out in the open, nothing and no one can put it back in the box. You have stepped into a space you were always meant to occupy. Not louder, not softer, but truer than ever. And from here on, every word you speak will carry the memory of that moment, reminding you that you've always had this power. You just needed to use it. You didn't stumble here by accident. You were led. If something in your spirit is stirring, don't ignore it. Tap Join to access exclusive content, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven souls. This isn't just a membership, it's your moment of alignment. Step into who you were born to be. Welcome to the Chosen. They built entire plans under the assumption that you would never notice. Behind closed doors, they traded favors, exchanged hidden signals, and constructed paths meant to guide you exactly where they wanted. Every move they made was wrapped in layers of distance and disguise, ensuring their fingerprints stayed invisible. In their minds, you were simply part of the scenery. Something to be moved when convenient, ignored when not. They watched you closely, collecting pieces of your life like fragments of a puzzle they believed they could solve. They marked what they assumed were vulnerabilities, memorized the rhythms of your choices, and crafted scenarios they thought would push you into their desired outcome. What escaped their understanding was that you were not reacting to them at all. You were being refined by a greater process they could never map. Each disappointment, each season where solitude pressed against your spirit, every pause where you held your truth back instead of spilling it too soon, all of it was shaping something sharper, something cleaner, something they would never be ready for. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click Super Thank You, and sow a gift of $20 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let His overflow pour through you. Their confidence wasn't quiet, it was loud enough to echo in the way they moved. They arranged themselves in positions they thought were unshakable. They set their stories in place, building layers of justification like walls no one could climb. And yet, those very walls became their trap, because the strength they thought they had was nothing more than a reflection in still water, convincing until the first ripple broke it apart. They mistook your calm for emptiness, your endurance for inexperience. They assumed your silence meant you lacked understanding, that your generosity was a sign you could be bent at will. But they never considered that stillness can be a form of observation, and that kindness can mask a strength they had no capacity to measure. The turning point wasn't marked by fireworks or noise. It came the moment your truth left your lips. On the surface, nothing dramatic shifted. Yet underneath, entire structures began to tilt. Invisible foundations cracked, conversations altered their tone, and paths they thought were certain began to twist in directions they couldn't predict. Now, your presence doesn't require proximity. You don't need to share a room, a building, or even a city with them to alter the air they breathe. The energy you carry has been sharpened into something so precise that its reach ignores distance. People who have never met you can sense it, and those who once thought they knew you are startled by how differently they now feel when your name is mentioned. What they once believed they could control has slipped entirely beyond their grasp. They played a game they thought they'd invented, only to realize you weren't following their rules. You were rewriting them. And in doing so, you removed the very ground they were standing on. The power they tried to manipulate has turned into the current that now carries you forward. Their plans dissolve in its flow, while yours take root in deeper waters. And somewhere, in the silence they once thought belonged to you, they finally understand. They never had the advantage. They were simply waiting for you to reveal it. They feel the shift the moment your focus drifts toward them. It's not magic, not superstition. It's the undeniable pull of awareness pressing against their carefully built illusions. The precision of your perception has grown so acute it slips past their crafted narratives, cutting straight into the quiet spaces they thought no one could reach. Even while you move through your ordinary day, there are restless minds unraveling behind closed doors. They lie awake, chasing fragments of your words, trying to measure what you truly meant and how much you actually see. They replay your expressions in their memory like evidence in a case, wondering if the curve of your mouth or the way you paused mid-sentence was an unspoken signal that more truth is on its way. Their unease is self-sustaining now. They don't need you to act. Their own thoughts are tightening the noose. Behind the scenes, conversations about you are becoming rare and deliberate, as if speaking your name might stir a force they can't contain. When you are mentioned, it's with a peculiar blend of caution and apprehension, like handling something both sacred and dangerous. In their desperation, some are reshaping your image to fit a safer story. Not because they want to protect you, but because they're scrambling to soothe themselves with the illusion that you're less capable than you've shown yourself to be. They speak as if your insight is born from imagination rather than understanding, as if your clarity is nothing but a trick of the light. The breaking point came when you unveiled knowledge they never thought could reach your ears. You made passing references to matters buried so deep that even those inside their circle felt a shiver of recognition. That casual certainty carried the weight of a silent verdict, forcing them to question not only who has spoken to you, but how many of their supposed fortresses were nothing more than open doors. What makes their mistake so vast is how little they understood the depth of what stood before them. They had been studying the exterior, blind to the network of strength and insight that had been constructed within you over years of trials. They were measuring you by the surface, while an entirely different foundation was being fortified beyond their line of sight. While they schemed, you evolved. While they maneuvered for advantage, you stepped into a vantage point they could never access. Now they're left to wrestle with the reality that the person they once dismissed has become someone whose presence alone disrupts the quiet order of their plans. And somewhere in the back of their minds, they know the truth. Their fear is not of what you've already spoken, but of what you've yet to reveal. And that knowledge will haunt them far longer than anything you've said aloud. They move through life tethered to the same cycles of fear and self-interest, believing that control came from masking intentions and bending others to their will. All the while, you were stepping into a space where the rules were not the same. A place where clarity, integrity, and perception were the real measures of strength. Without even realizing it, you've been sharpening a different kind of intelligence, one that sees beyond words and into the fabric of motive itself. While others perfected the art of disguise, you were mastering the art of recognition. You learned how to sense the weight behind a statement, how to detect the shift in air when truth leaves the room. You didn't need to confront every lie head-on. You could simply stand in your authenticity, and the falsehoods around you would begin to unravel on their own. This isn't symbolic. It's as tangible as a lock being forced open from the inside. When your clarity meets someone's constructed facade, the structure doesn't just weaken, it collapses. The sound of your voice carries something that shakes loose the illusions people hold onto, as if the very frequency is rewriting the space you both inhabit. That's why they feel that involuntary shiver. Their bodies know what their minds resist, that what you carry is not ordinary influence. The environments they thought they could control begin to change without their permission. Connections shift, alliances dissolve, and conversations they once steered now take directions they never anticipated. If this plays out where you earn your living, understand that you've become the pivot point no one planned for. Your refusal to bend has tilted the balance of power. Those who relied on secrecy are now forced into the open, and every move they make is shadowed by the fact that you exist within the same arena. The architect of this long-running web of disruption believed they had perfected the craft of staying untouchable. They built invisible corridors for their actions to pass through unnoticed, crafted stories that seemed airtight, and gathered people around them who had no idea they were being used as pieces in a far larger scheme. This isn't their first time. 4 years, maybe longer, they've refined their methods, leaving behind scattered damage while walking away unchallenged. But the moment they crossed paths with you, the sequence broke. You didn't need proof to start seeing the outline of their patterns. Your instincts began marking them long before your conscious mind caught up. They can't account for that. No preparation could have shielded them from someone whose awareness cuts this deeply. And the more they try to hide, the more their own actions betray them. Because in the presence of someone who operates from a higher order, every shadow eventually finds the light. It began with details so subtle they could have passed unnoticed. A pause that didn't match the flow of the conversation, a minor shift in tone that didn't fit the words being spoken, a reaction that carried more weight than the moment deserved. Without forcing the process, your mind began weaving these fragments together, mapping out patterns they didn't even realize they were revealing. Now, they're scrambling to measure what you've truly seen against what they hope you're only assuming. Every past encounter is replaying in their thoughts like a film they wish they could edit. They're combing through old memories, trying to pinpoint where they might have left the door open, wondering if you've been keeping a quiet record of their behavior. The uncertainty has become its own punishment, a constant hum of unrest that follows them into every room, every meeting, every sleepless night. What they don't know is that the chain of proof has already begun surfacing, not in the ways they expected, but through channels they never considered. Records thought to be gone for good are being unearthed. Words they spoke in confidence are reaching ears they never intended, carried by people who are now piecing together their own understanding of the truth. The digital traces they believed had dissolved are resurfacing in the hands of individuals they never imagined would take interest. Investigators, analysts, or even those who were once indifferent are suddenly compelled to follow the threads. What you spoke wasn't just a warning, it was a signal, and the ripples it sent out are now returning with undeniable force. There is a strange elegance in how concealed facts emerge when the balance of justice tilts. It can look almost accidental, an overlooked document sent to an unexpected recipient, a conversation captured and filed away in a forgotten archive that later demands review. The timing feels impossible to plan, yet it aligns with an unseen precision that leaves little room for coincidence. It's as if reality itself has joined the search, aligning moments, people, and circumstances to push the hidden into the light. Those who once moved without fear of exposure are now watching the edges of their world close in. The more they resist, the more the threads pull together, drawing them toward a reckoning they can neither outrun nor delay. Their confidence, once built on the belief that their secrets were unshakable, is cracking. They can sense the momentum of something larger at work, something they cannot manipulate. And as each fragment of truth falls into place, the picture becomes too clear to deny. The very forces they underestimated have become the architects of their undoing, not through your direct pursuit, but through the quiet orchestration of events that seem to arrive on their own. And now, all they can do is brace for the moment when the final piece clicks into place and the full image stands before them. Someone who once chose silence has now stepped forward with words they never imagined they would speak. It isn't coincidence. It's the inevitable unfolding of hidden truth, moving through whatever voice is willing to carry it. You don't need a complete map to start asking questions that lead exactly where they need to go. The way you've grown has tuned you to sense movement beneath the surface, even if you don't yet know the mechanics behind it. There's a tension in the air you can feel before you ever discover its source. This sensitivity is what makes your words land with such uncanny accuracy. It's not about having every piece of information. It's about being aligned with the very current of truth. When you spoke, you connected unseen points that others assumed could never be linked, leaving them reeling in the realization that their supposed invisibility was an illusion. In that instant, the dynamic shifted. Those who thought they were circling you realized they had been walking into your range the entire time. The balance of pursuit flipped, and they felt it in a way that bypassed reason, a primal recognition that the ground beneath them had changed. And what's remarkable is that you never had to make threats for them to feel it. Your presence alone works like a catalyst, drawing out the weight people have been hiding from themselves. The moment you speak from genuine alignment, the falsehoods others cling to start to loosen their grip. Their own conscience turns your sentences into challenges, even when you never framed them as accusations. You become a reflection they can't avoid, showing them fragments of the reality they've tried to suppress. Watch closely in the days ahead. You'll see them take steps they wouldn't have taken before. Small errors will creep into their routines. Words will slip that they would have guarded in the past, betraying truths they swore they could conceal. They will start defending themselves against things you never even claimed. The pressure in their mental space is shifting the way they think, speak, and act, creating visible cracks in the persona they've maintained. Those cracks are where the undeniable proof will seep through. If you've been carrying that sense of unease without a clear reason, this is why. Your deeper perception has been registering signals your conscious mind is only now beginning to translate. That quiet suspicion that someone has been maneuvering against you, the feeling of shadowed intentions, the sense that masks were being worn in your presence. All of it is now being affirmed by the very people who thought they could keep it hidden. What's unfolding is the confirmation of what your instincts have whispered all along. And the more they try to control the narrative, the more they reveal the truth you've been sensing from the start. The sense you carried in your chest wasn't fear or suspicion. It was a knowing that ran ahead of the facts, pulling you toward truths that are now beginning to surface. What's coming won't necessarily crash through with noise and spectacle. It will arrive in pieces, each fragment revealing just enough to loosen the next, until the web holding their false narrative together can no longer bear its own weight. What you spoke that day set something in motion. It was the quiet start of a chain of events that can't be reversed. Everyone who heard you became part of its current, carrying an awareness that spreads without conscious effort, touching places and people you may never meet. The signal you released is still moving, still weaving its way into the spaces they once believed were untouchable. The deception they've relied on is beginning to erode in your wake. It isn't only about lies being exposed, it's about the collapse of an entire scaffolding of pretenses. And the more they try to hold it together, the faster it slips. Somewhere in their awareness, they can already sense the unraveling, like a structure groaning under invisible strain. This is why, when you think about the situation, certain sensations press into your mind. An image, a heaviness, a feeling of something being consumed and dismantled at the same time. These impressions aren't random. They are your awareness tuning into the shift as the truth moves through layers they can no longer defend. Their artificial worlds, the carefully drawn outlines of who they pretended to be and what they wanted others to believe, are beginning to dissolve. It's not a metaphorical loss to them. It's the collapse of the ground they've walked on for years. And in its place stands a reality that does not bend to their will. The undoing they're facing now is not just about status or influence. It's the confrontation with a deeper truth, that the foundation of their existence was built on unstable principles, and in the presence of something genuine, those principles cannot survive. They will come to realize that no amount of strategy or performance can restore what's been lost. The space you occupy now is beyond their reach, and the momentum of this shift is beyond their control. They built their rise on distortion and control, never once considering that such foundations could not withstand someone whose very essence is anchored in unshakable truth. What they are confronting now is not just a loss in a single exchange. It's the realization that the entire conflict was destined to end against them from the very beginning. Some of them believed they were engaging with an easy target, someone they could steer or discredit at will. They mistook your grace for fragility, your calm for inexperience, your measured responses for lack of insight. They couldn't have been further from reality. The softness they saw was not emptiness, it was discipline, forged in a place they have never walked. Your restraint wasn't born from fear, it was a deliberate choice. You were waiting for the moment when speaking would have the greatest impact, when the truth would pierce through without resistance. Information was being gathered through currents they could neither intercept nor comprehend, flowing to you in ways their systems couldn't contain. Images, impressions, and inner confirmations came to you piece by piece, connecting threads that bypassed every layer of their misdirection. You were being guided by a wisdom that did not require permission or explanation, one that moved with precision beyond human timing. When you finally gave voice to what you carried, it was not casual conversation. It was the release of something long prepared within you. You weren't simply sharing a view. You were delivering a message entrusted to you through a process they will never understand. And with that delivery, the outcome was no longer yours to manage. It belonged to forces that move beyond human urgency. While they remain restless, scanning the horizon for the next blow, you are able to stand still, knowing the truth carries its own momentum. You've done your part. The next steps are already in motion without your interference. This doesn't mean you withdraw entirely. It means you act only when moved by the same alignment that brought you here. If new insights surface, if you feel the need to observe more closely or preserve certain details, you follow that pull without forcing the process. You know that the revelation of what has been hidden doesn't depend on your effort alone. The structures that work for truth are far more intricate than anything they could anticipate. Their attempts to twist your image have turned against them. Each whisper, each false account, each carefully planted rumor has become its own undoing. People have begun to question why so much energy was spent trying to erase you. And the only logical answer is that you carry something they fear. The weight of that fear has now become proof in itself, and the trail they thought was erased is revealing itself in ways they never accounted for.